Good evening, everybody. This is KQBH LP, Los Angeles, California. This is Community Built Radio. You guys are now tuned in to Ham Radio. This is your DJ here, Patrick J. Martinez. Community Built Radio. We are broadcasting live off of Brooklyn Avenue in the beautiful, beautiful city of Boyle Heights. Today, we have a really good show lined up for you guys tonight. Now, Studio B, for those that are maybe listening to the first time, or maybe you guys are a seasoned listener, I just wanted to remind everybody, Studio B is where we is where we really have the deep dives, and we look at independent crafters from all forms of art. And this is where we have the deep conversation. This is where we really explore the eye of the independent, the mind of the independent artist. And we have a wonderful guest with us tonight. With us, I think what we have visiting with us is the frontman of a band that I think is probably LA's best kept secret. We're going to be talking about their 9th studio album today. That's going to be a lot of our big focus. But before we get to that, and before we announce and chat with Mr. Steven Siegel, Steven Siegel of the Happy Casualties, and just so everyone knows he's here, we're going to check his mic right now real quick. Steve, say hello.
Hello.
All right. So, see, before we get into some of our announcements and we get into everything, I am very I'm very pleased to have this conversation with you. I'm also very honored to be having this conversation with you. And to me, this album, is that we're going to be discussing the new album of Floods, Droughts, and Other Ravages Visited Upon the Earth. I think it's an important album. I think this is in the genre we are talking to, in, for lack of a better genre like name, we'll just say alternative, right? And then we'll get into it further. And but tell you what, before we get into that, let me just remind you guys that immediately following me, we are going to have Kraslos with Hologramma Radio. Later on in the night, we're going to have DJ Danny with Soundtrack of the Streets. Okay, so keep it here at KQBH 101.5 FM. But you know what? I'm not even going to bother with the announcements today. Let's get into the first song that we are going to be playing from the Happy Casualties. Again, we have the frontman, singer, songwriter, guitarist. He does so much. But we are going to get into the first song. And the first song that we're going to be getting into, Steve, you want to announce it?
This is Fillmore Saloon Song.
KQBH 101.5 FM.
When you are near, my thoughts get unclear, and my heart you've taken away. I know you have your mom and your dad, but I need my baby all the same. Because you know I can't leave you alone, so you always go running back home to your small town relating and a quiet vacation to leave me in this godforsaken home. Well, I know I was invited, and for that I'm so delighted, but for reasons still unclear I shall not go, 'cause there are no guarantees, and besides I've got some needs, so the die in my hands they must roll. 'Cause you know I can't leave you alone, so you
right there was the Happy Casualties with the Fillmore Saloon song. And sitting across from me right here on the counter is actually our guest, the frontman, Steve Siegel.
But I did not sing. That wasn't me singing on that track.
Ooh,
that's my buddy
who was
John.
that?
That's his song.
Okay, that's John. That was his
Yeah.
song. Okay, so you know what? That actually, that kind of covers something that we're going to talk about, because this album has a lot of musicians in it.
Yeah.
And the musicians in it are, you guys really drop down that musicianship, like how talented and tight all these musicians are. Like, this is literally for 2024. This is the equivalent of the band's basement tapes.
Not to not to like lump myself in with the band, but that track especially was something that we were really going for a band, the band, and especially the second album with Across the Great Divide and that sort of stuff. Like, because that song, like, the thing about the album is that we switched things up a little bit. So I only just started playing like keyboard like over the last like 2 years or so, because I had to write the Where My Heart Belongs song, and I had to write it on keyboard for some reason. And so for that song, that was John's song, and he played guitar and he sang, and I came up with that honky tonk keyboard part. And we recorded that album at a studio in Long Beach that my buddy Matt, his friend Antoine owns. It's really old. Sublime recorded there, and the piano that I'm playing, that piano is like 100 years old. It's really, and it looks it. It's a really old honky tonk piano, and it was all tracked kind of live. That's why you have that blending of John's acoustic guitar,
With
my piano, and then I didn't even sing on it. It was just John and then my drummer Ryan, because we wanted to switch it up where certain tracks, it was either like on Fun, it's John and my cousin Brian, and then some songs it's me and John, like Debris and stuff. So we do mix it up a lot, and then there's some we're all singing on. But we wanted to have a thing where people are switching up instruments and exploring like the different songs. And a lot of the really great musicianship was Caitlin Wolfberg, my buddy Isaac. They played the strings. And my buddy Matt's friend who played lead guitar on Tilting at the Palms, because I'm not like a really good shredder, but I can't remember that dude's name, Colin. So those are the people with the real chops. Me and John and Brian and Ryan, we just basically came up with the songs and worked them really hard and tried to come up with a very band-like or basement tapes kind of presentation of them.
I mean, the fact that you're you're speaking on that, the band aspect, I thought I was the only one that was picking it up, the only one that was kind of like getting that feel and getting and it's throughout the whole album. I mean, and like you said, we are exploring strings, we are exploring, you're playing that honky tonk piano, because that's what I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you, was it one of those upright honky tonk ones?
I don't. It's just a regular piano, but it was super old.
Man, so a lot of that, is making me okay. So I wasn't just romanticizing the whole album, right?
No, if you saw that studio, if you saw the compound, it's like a hangar-looking building in Long Beach, and lots of really old guitars, and it's all wood, and it is really, it's antiquated looking. It's perfect for a lot of the tracks on that album.
But those acoustics in that building, wouldn't that be helpful to?
Oh yeah,
and it obviously is and was as we listen to the album here. So let's before we get deeper into the album of floods, droughts, and other ravages visited upon the earth, give us your origin story.
Well, I was born at St. John's Hospital in Santa Monica. I went to St. Mark's Grammar School. I went to St. Monica's High School. Went to SMC for a little bit. Ended up going to Cal State LA. That was school. I I started playing music in a ska band when I was 18 or 19.
Wow.
It was called Water Slide.
Water slide.
Yeah, and that was like my brush with fame or success.
How do you say that was your brush with success? What happened?
Cause we opened for like Goldfinger, and we used to open for the Hippos, and Goldfinger was like once, and the Aquabats.
Wow.
And bands like that.
Good established old ska.
Well, they
bands
were,
back then.
but this is like, you're talking like 95.
Well,
So it was like we were playing like, and I was like a metal industrial kind of guy who kind of, just because I met people that were playing music at like SMC, and they introduced me to these younger guys that were playing ska, and so I just decided to like kind of move out of my comfort zone and start playing with them, you know, and it was like a whole scene, and there's never been anything like it in LA that I've experienced since then.
And that's kind of what that had been considered, like that second generation ska.
Yeah, that
Right?
was a
That's
straight up
the
second
straight
generation.
Second generation, and that's funny, because you and me are similar in age, right?
Yeah.
And as we've been talking before we got on the air, is we were learning about one another. So, because as you say that, I'm thinking I was there at some of those shows. Maybe not.
Dizzy Debbie's.
Yeah. Maybe not particularly maybe at that show that I could recall.
We
but-
played there a lot.
But I recall going to certain places. Over here in Montebello, there was a ballroom that always had a lot of ska bands come
Yeah.
in. So like Yeska would come through. I think.
Oh God, I haven't heard that.
I think No
anymore.
Doubt played right when they were still
Yeah.
little.
Yeah.
And you know, I know, I think Hepcat played there. There was a lot, and so it's just.
Less Than Jake
Yes,
was a band
yeah,
that we
was-
played with too.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
So even as we're looking at your origin story, you've already have been in the mix, as it were, with what are now looking as, you know, important bands of the genre, you know, musicians that are still playing.
Yeah.
And we're gonna get into that, because that really speaks into the longevity of yourself as a musician and the longevity of the Happy Casualties. Because people, we are talking to a frontman who's been doing what he's doing with the Happy Casualties for 16 years plus.
Yeah.
So that's longevity that we're going to be talking about, Steve, and really get into what's made you so strong in that. Now, so here we are. We're playing ska music in Water Slide.
Yeah.
Right? So where did Water Slide take you? Where did it take you on your path? Where did it take you in terms of your musicianship? What were some of the huge benefits that came out of having yourself being in the mix with a lot of these pivotal ska second generation bands?
Well, the most pivotal thing was the guy that basically the band. There was two people that were that were like vying for leadership of it. A guy named Jeremy, and then this guy named Wesley Starrett. And Wes was basically, he was like a poor kid. These kids were all going to Hamilton High, and I had graduated like the year before. So I was just about a year older. And actually, no, because I graduated when I was 17, so I was a little bit older, but not much. And they were like, the thing about Wes was like a really like poor kid that you would imagine seeing in like Missouri or Oklahoma or whatever. And he just happened to be at this school, and he was just like the most amazing guitarist, and in a lot of ways the most amazing songwriter, who he would just effortlessly play and sing and write songs. He was a like entirely graceful individual in a lot of, and he was uncouth in a lot of ways, but as far as his artistry, he was really amazing. And the way that he played, and watching him write songs, it made me try to break out of some of these like heavy metal or industrial sort of like modes of thought that I had, that I needed all this artifice or instrumentation to create. It made me realize that you could break these songs down to a way where you'd just be playing them on guitar and singing with like the melody. And I've never, there's maybe been a few times, because I've been doing it a long time, where I maybe approximated what Wes did. And Wes what ended up happening is we kind of switched roles because I started like sort of a band with my buddy after Waterslide broke up, basically because all the other guys went to college, and Wes played bass for it, and he wasn't really writing songs. But he just basically had like this really unvarnished, graceful artistry. He could, like, we would just be playing on like Louie Louie or something, and he would just do this like jaw-dropping solo that was just like just so. He was just such a great artist, and I basically learned to write songs from watching him. And so maybe sometimes in like the last like 18 years or whatever, I've come close, or I've approximated what Wes has done. But yeah, when you get to meet somebody who really, like, they have a really natural, pure talent. Oh, there's a guy named Judson McKinney, and he was on the East Side. Judson looks just like Wes did. And Judson has that same real easy sort of genius that Wes had. But both those guys, they're off a little bit, And Wes definitely was off, because I don't even know what happened to Wes. But those guys, you would watch them, and they'd play a song for you on the acoustic guitar, and you'd be like, man, like, I hope I could do something that good.
Wow, man. And that's what you took.
That was the main thing I got. I mean, playing bigger shows was really good, but playing with seeing somebody's sort of process and then being around someone, it shows you that you can kind of do it. And that's like, I mean, having people appreciate, like, all this stuff that you said before we went on air about like loving the record is like, that's like amazing. And I love to have people like, I mean, it doesn't happen, but to say things like that are really nice. But also getting somebody to sort of be inspired and be like trying to sort of do their own thing, that's really cool too. But guys like Wes, they don't really care because they're sort of just in their own really authentic state of creativity.
More about making that music, probably opposed. It's probably more gratifying for him to play that music for you, as opposed to having it played and then have it laid down on track, laid down on a recording. So it seems like he was like, I'll show you what you can do. You go ahead and run.
No.
And you do the recording.
Yeah.
Like he was a masterful Jedi, like showing his Padawan how to use his.
Well, he wasn't like trying to school me on it, but I learned.
He did.
Yeah, ultimately for sure.
Why? Because you were willing to learn.
Oh yeah.
Right. So had you not been willing to learn, I don't think we would actually be where we are today, sitting right here. Because who knows how that could have turned around.
Yeah, well, and your process as far as, and I hate saying things like that.
It's all right.
Go ahead, double down. Your process on going through these albums is kind of, I mean, a lot of people say stuff where you have to do all these really experimental things or do drugs or whatever, but really it is about breaking yourself into this point where you're saying, like, I have to learn to do something again. I have to learn to do something new and different. And that's where, and you'll always find it in like unexpected places. So yeah, Wes was definitely somebody like that. Even when I was hanging out with Judson, he kind of presented that too. And the fact that he's like this doppelganger of this guy that like I knew like, 20 some years prior, it's just crazy. And they have like the same kind of like raw talent, but there's all these other things that you have to do. And a lot of it is just like really like working hard. You have to just work hard to do what you're doing, to do anything well, especially songwriting. And that's what you're going to be, if you're trying to do this not as a living but because it's your life, then you're going to have to like commit to working really hard to make the best possible songs and to capture them the best possible way that you can. So.
And this is something that you, along with the Happy Casualties, have been doing for 16 years now, because we're looking
a little more,
right? So are we closer to 20? Should we be comfortable saying 20?
It's like say 18, okay, I think. Yeah.
18. Okay. And
Ryan, if he was here and we had him like liquored up, then the more that he drinks, the longer the time we've known each other. So it'll move from like 17 years.
Oh, that
I
memory
played
starts
with,
coming back.
and you know what? It's good also too because we can't swear, and you would just be in so much trouble, you know. So it's better that I'm here by myself.
All right. That's fair enough. That's fair enough. But you know what? He's listening,
Hopefully,
showing that support, and maybe hopefully having a drink for
NyQuil.
both of us, right? So you know what? Before we continue, and hear some more of this origin story that's leading us to Happy Casualties, let's jump into another song from Of Floods, Droughts, and Other Ravages Visited Upon the Earth. This was another one here that I really invested in. Okay, I've invested in a lot of this album, right?
Okay.
But this is one song that I definitely invested in. It's kind of in the same vein of what we heard, and we're going to try to get some other songs to show the mix and the variety that you've given us. And I know I'm picking songs that may or may not have had you lead the vocals, but that to me it's also these.
No, I don't care. There's no ego in it at all.
But
No,
I wanted
it's
to show that musicianship, so
Yeah.
I chose songs that might, so I just want our audience to kind of to hear it. So I'm gonna stop talking, and we're gonna get into Rattlesnake Highway Blues.
perfect.
Here at KQBH 101.5 FM. This is Community Built Radio. This is your disc jockey here, Patrick J. Martinez, just another geek from East LA. KQBH LP, Los Angeles, California, 101.5 FM. A community service of the Boyle Heights Arts Conservatory. Broadcasting live on your FM dial and streaming on lpfm.la.
Drive down the highway, big 18-wheeler. You see things my way, I make it clearer. You come to me, Home Depot parking lot. You better watch your mouth or
KQBH 101.5 FM. This is Patrick J. Martinez. You guys are tuned into Studio B. Please don't forget, later on tonight, we're going to getting us into our late night Saturday. We're going to have Brown Boogie with the Groove Theory. It's Saturday. What are you going to do? Right? It's Saturday. Hang out with us here at KQBH 101.5 FM. Now, those that listen to me, whether you listen to me Monday or Saturday, you know I try to prove to everyone that I do play the best in new independent music while exploring the crates of the past. Now, I feel in my heart of hearts that we are definitely going to be proving a couple of my points with my guest here, Steve Siegel from the Happy Casualties. That right there we just finished again was Rattlesnake Highway Blues. That is taken from the new album, the 9th album of Floods, Droughts, and Other Ravages Visited Upon the Earth. One of my favorite things about this release, Steve, is you threw it down on some plastic plates. You came and gave us vinyl on this particular release. Not only that, it's that thick, what might be considered 180 gram vinyl or whatever the fancy term is to sell it. But the fact is that you gave us a wonderful, tangible release, which is probably very appropriate for what you've been laying down here. Now, see, before we broke into this song, we were talking about your origin story, right? Everything that led you to here. Now, tell you what, before we get into Floods, talk to us about that first walk into the Happy Casualties, into that world, into the last 20 years for which you've been working so diligently on.
Well, I was playing with, I was actually living with my old bass player. It was like this house in Venice, and there was all these bands there, and my bass player was living with me at the time, and there were some other people there, and we had this drum set that my buddy Wes had set up on like a drum riser, and it was like a New Year's party, and like 2005 into 2006, and we had all these people over. Also, I had like quit drinking and drugs like 5 or 6 months before, I think. So, and that lasted for a few years. Mainly the drinking came back. The drugs never really came back. But the guy that came by at the New Year's party was a drummer, and his name was Ryan Blandford. And he just was like talking to me about the drum set, and we were like, yeah, well, we got this band, we need a drummer. Ethan played bass, and pretty soon he was like showing up to practices, and he was just like consistently there practicing. And so it was like and then we started writing songs sort of as a band, and then I had songs, like I think like songs like We Only Come Out at Night. I had Despair for a while. I think I had Hope. I wrote Hope in like 20 minutes one night when I couldn't sleep. So I had some songs. I was about 28 at the time. And so I had some songs, but we worked on songs together. And then like at some point I kicked Ethan out of the band after we recorded that first album. And then we were still living together. And then like, and yeah, man, it's just been like, it's been super tumultuous in and out. And then, but like Ryan has always come back and forth with me. And then like, so Ryan is like basically my partner in the band, and so it's been like lots of different recording sort of situations. One of my favorites was the Sons of the New West album with this guy, Philip Hout, who recorded it. That was like that was an old building in like HP, which probably isn't too far from here, and I really liked the sound and sort of the vibe that had. So now it's pretty much settled into me and Ryan as like we're like the core of the band, and we've got different guys. We got a guy who might be playing bass with us, and he's come to like a practice, and we're trying to. He's like young. He's like 23, and just trying to get a band together to play. But Ryan and I will still play. I think all the shows, any shows we've played in the last like few years, has just been me and Ryan.
You too.
Yeah.
Like also like a duet kind of. Well, at least because it's a two-piece. At least.
Yeah, and it's got like all the energy of a band, and we have so many songs, and we never have a set list.
Nice.
So when you don't have a set list, you can really sort of like feel the crowd, which I'm not great at doing because sometimes I'm a little anxious and I speed things up. But you can really sort of like, you can really just try to like go through these things, because you have slow songs, you have fast songs, you have country songs, you have more soulful songs, and you can kind of like shuffle between these sorts of moods that you have. And Ryan and I, that's the coolest thing about playing with somebody that for so long, is you have such an intuitive link with them, as far as like when you hear how your guitar strums are matching up with their snare.
Nice.
Or their cymbals, or the crash, or whatever, or the hi-hat, and just knowing where the hits are, and then you're just like really like playing together, and you want to, and when you get people in the band, you want them to sort of just be participating in that same synergy. I guess that's kind of like what the Grateful Dead did. A lot of people hate on the Dead. I do like the Dead. It's not my biggest thing, but I really like that idea of a really organic sort of collective where people are just, you got to have somebody leading. I have to pick the song sort of because I wrote them all, but and kind of read the vibe. But where everybody, once they're into the song, is sort of like playing off of each other.
So when you're talking about that, I mean, we really have to look at how bands are kind of a community amongst themselves. But what you're really talking about is how could that key element is communication. And I mean, because look, I mean, I would imagine you're in a band for as long as you are. I mean, that's a whole other relationship that you're having with another bandmate, with another person. So you have to be symbiotic, and you have to have your forms of communication and know how to communicate with each other. Because I'm sure you're on stage, you're like this, and you got to be like, nod, or he's doing his thing, and he's like, okay, change. This is what we talked about.
That's the thing is communication is like a good word, but it's like, it's kind of even more than that. Yeah. It's so weird. It's just when you're like really like synced up with somebody.
And the thing is, I know a lot of times, we have bands come in or artists, and I like that you actually mentioned that clearly, because when I think of some of my favorite musicians, and when I think of my favorite groups or artists or whatever, I start looking at that relationship and how that relationship at least is being presented to me in front. I'm not talking about what happens back, behind closed doors, but when I'm looking at these groups, it's like I am paying attention to that element. And I think sometimes, we had a conversation about, music and current outlook on music. I think sometimes we do come across groups that may not have the communication gelled down. But then again, we are talking to you, Steve, who has built this relationship for 20 years plus. Right?
You're doing the Ryan thing.
I'm doing the Ryan thing. Since Ryan's not here, and the
you got to keep adding time.
I'm going to keep adding years in the spirit of Ryan, okay? Mr. Blandford, that's what we're going to do. We're just going to do that. But, I mean, it's something that to me is what really falls into the longevity of you yourself as a musician, and why you keep pushing as the Happy Casualties.
Yeah, and I mean, actually, it's like, too, it's like there isn't really a behind the curtain, too. Because, like, when he and I are, like, hanging out, like, we've gotten to be better friends over the last, like, few years, And when we're hanging out, there's a lot of stuff. I don't know, really, what goes on in a lot of bands, but I assume there's lots of, like, weird passive-aggressive things or like, critical comments and things like that. I don't think I've ever really experienced that in a band. But like with him, there's never any sort of like digs, or I mean, there might be some mean joking, but it's still joking.
What friends do.
Yeah.
Especially
But
with
there's no behind the curtain where someone's like ultimately like got your number.
And I think that's really what comes out in the music.
Especially that album too, because you have that same kind of synergy. But my cousin Brian Godfrey is in it. My buddy John is in it, and we all got to like know each other musically. And a lot of the practicing was in like the front room at my parents' house on a really makeshift like acoustic and stuff, where we just figured out how we sort of wanted to play the songs, you know. So there was never any sorts of I've never been in a situation that's sort of like I don't like that word either. I'm like saying I've never been in a band situation that was like toxic, you know. But and there definitely wasn't anything on this album. I mean, the toxicity is all in the negativity of my lyrics and songs. So it's all there. The people creating it don't have to be toxic and negative. The music is doing that for them. So
no, you know what? That's really cool to hear. But that's refreshing to hear, because you know sometimes we always hear these stories of bands in the past or current bands or whatever the situation is. So it's cool to kind of hear that, to hear how the relationship is, and you know, not only that, I mean, that has to go be said for probably all these other bands that have been around for 20 years plus, that have been doing the thing as long as you've been doing it. And there's a reason why you guys are still here and why everyone's still for it. Now, let's get into the album itself. And I think one of the first things for me that really helped capture me and kind of played to my taste, my sensibilities, was the cover of Floods, Droughts, and Other Ravages Visited Upon the Earth. I know that's a mouthful, everybody, to say, but this is also thematic to the group themselves, because almost every release prior to this has had this very fruitful, mouthful title, right?
All the titles.
And that's one of the big grabs, too. And the cover, because I really like this cover, and I really think this cover really encapsulates what we're going to hear on the record, the genres that we're going to hear. And to me, this is super LA. This is very LA. And once we start opening the package of the record and get into it, to me, it's a perfect Los Angeles album. It also feels like a departure album at the same time, where like this is all the LA sound, but it also seems like a departure point, which we'll get into after if you want to get into now. But before we get into that, let's mention the artist.
That's my buddy CJ, Blackwater Art, on Instagram.
And from what I understand is you had a very specific vision when it came to the cover, because when we look at the cover, we're kind of seeing two different classes, right? Like that's what I see. I'm seeing two different classes. This could possibly be the city, and maybe we're getting into the more rural part of the city, or more of the Americana folk part of it. It's really where you want to take it. But when I see that's what it's invoking for me. It's like a complex drawing, even though for some it may not look so complex. But the complexity of the cover for me really tells me what I'm going to be expecting.
Yeah, and I'm like that. That's really great. Like I think that one interview that you listened to, like of all the things that I really like stressed about getting exactly dialed in more than the music was kind of the cover. I wanted that Talking Heads, Little Creatures sort of macroscopic, cartoonish sort of vibe. And the thing is it's definitely LA. And the album originally was intended to go sort of like all over the country, and only Brian really took it to New Orleans with Voodoo Queen. Everything else really is in kind of California. Like Fillmore was where Brian's from, and that plays an important part because like with you always is kind of about like this really rustic idea I have of Fillmore, which is a town that's just a little bit like south of Ventura. And it always was a place that I went to as a kid that was like, it felt like an older town, you know? And John's song, Fillmore Saloon song, it wasn't even named that. He didn't have a name, and I think I came up with that name. So, I mean, there was something about it where, like I told you, like with the 3 albums before, there was like a lot of negativity I was indulging gleefully. And this one was something where I was like, well, you know what? I kind of worked that out of my system. Let's try to do something that's a little bit, you know, more hands across the water. But more like sort of Americana, more of like, you know, more of something that's, you know, touching more sort of emotional sort of areas. And for some reason in that process, I was thinking about Fillmore and my youth and riding skateboards. And that's why what John's song Fun is so cool, because it doesn't just evoke me being out where you told me, like out in like Westwood, Rhino Records, All American Murder, it's all there. You see it all as you're hearing the song. But it also reminds me of like riding skateboards with Brian and Brett and my brother Greg out in Fillmore, you know? So Fillmore just came, and then when I look at the more rural part, Fillmore's not like that, obviously, but that's what it represents, you know? And the Total Ocean Sermon song is like, that's like me getting a lot of that really baseline negativity out of my system, where I'm saying like all these people have to be annihilated with like a tidal wave. Not so much Fillmore, but like LA, you know?
Yeah, and it's let's talk on that Total Ocean Sermon, because I really like the choice that you made. It was daring or whatever, like. And the reason why I'm saying it's so daring is
it's long and weird.
Well, traditionally, when we look at an album, we're like, no, we got to put that good banger, that bop right there, because that bop is, and it's got to be maybe under 3 minutes, because we want people to go through the whole album. You went against the grain on that. You kind of, like you said, you kind of had the negativity of the album in the front
and center, yeah.
And that's almost a 9-minute song.
Yeah.
But when you're listening to it, it does not feel like a 9-minute song, because it almost feels like there's 2 songs in one, because there's this kind of break in the middle where we get the talkie, which is really like one of the themes that I liked, or the device or whatever, through this album, is there was a lot of talkie, like a lot of talking blues, talking out record. And what I really liked about that is because it's like you said, it's kind of that throwback to Fillmore, to what maybe Fillmore represents, to what musicians had done in the past with those talking albums, those talking blues.
Yeah, and that's really old too. It's like the 10s and 20s.
And I love the fact that you incorporated that into the album.
And a lot of that stuff too is when they were doing those type of records, they were singing about like the flood in Mississippi. They were doing stuff like that. It was really tied to the earth, you know, and catastrophe, you know. So yeah, that definitely, and the band and stuff too, those are definitely 2 like significant themes that like you picked up on, which it's really awesome that you did.
And it's just to go back on that, and thank you for that, because I was over here like, am I just romanticizing it? Am I reaching too much? Because, you know, this is kind of an album that how do I say this without sounding corny or goofy or like an old man, is I think this was an album I needed, and I think this was an album I feel that we all need, because it's a combination of the past, bringing it into the forefront of current times within this alternative genre.
Yeah.
Because right now I don't know if there's, as much as I found you alternative new you know, post-punk groups of now, I feel like this is an important album from here on for the next decade. I think that we should probably pay attention to. And again, I'm saying this because this is what is coming out. This is like when Omar came in, and, you know, he was talking to us. And Omar is one of our DJs here. He's one of the big heads here at the conservatory and here at KQBH. When we were talking about it, And the one thing the way I expressed and shared how this album is, it's to me it was getting the best of the 80s alternative punk scene that was coming out of Los Angeles, Long Beach, that Southern California punk sound. Of course, a lot of that came from Venice. Let's also admit that. But and then you
Or even like the Doors.
yeah, and you kind of get that. And not only that, you're not just capturing like that 80s sound. You're also going back to those bands that led these musicians to that sound. And then we get a little bit of that, and we're gonna get a little bit of 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the 90s alternative, indie, folk, Matador records, all that type of stuff. And here we are. Here comes Steve. Here comes Mr. Bradford. And here they are. Bam. And molding it into this kind of, I don't want to say it's a new sound, but it's a sound where you're saying, look, I'm at the age that I am now, and we're going to put this album because this genre needs to be pushed to the front. These are the albums that we want to hear. And I don't like making these generalizations.
Yeah.
But for someone who's listening and you like this type of... If you like Modest Mouse, Red Cross, if you liked Ugly Casanova, if you like Meat Puppets, this is really your album. And if you're one of those old heads that I'm always trying to reach out to and say, yo, old head, I get that you're stuck on this older music and these older bands, but there's musicians who have been holding it down for 20 plus years, and there's also new musicians who are holding the genre down. So if you want something new, my guys, Happy Casualties of floods, droughts, and other ravages visited upon the earth. And I love the title because it plays into the current things that LA had been facing in the last few years: floods, fires, pandemics.
Yeah.
It really, I think it also it's taking us out of those thoughts. It's taking us out of that negativity. I think that's why I really like this album, because there's happiness and hope coming out of it.
Yeah, there definitely is, and that's why I liked having John songs in there, because he definitely has I wrote like His Girl Death or whatever. That's like a really, I guess, typical song for me to do. But like John has like fun, and John has like more uplifting songs that presented this really good contrast to more of my, sort of my instincts, Like the G.G. Allen EP that we talked about, like that was like, I really just, that we just really laid down like 6 songs. Mm-hmm. It's really just like intensely aggressive. It's negative, that's just, and that's going to come out, but it's nice to have like something where you have that light and darkness sort of playing. Yeah. And it really, it makes the whole thing like more panoramic.
Yeah, and the thing is about that G.G. Allen, and I know that's going to be one of your upcoming projects that you're going to have out. I know it's already recorded.
Yeah.
I know we're just waiting for it to come out. But you said something about G.G. Allen that I don't think anyone has touched on. And you made a point, like one of his biggest mantras that got him doing his thing. And you're running with that. And I don't think any other musician is seeing G.G. Allen that deep. Like sometimes I think when we look at G.G. Allen, we're on the surface of G.G. Allen.
Yeah.
Yes, he's so scandalous and he was so crazy and oh my God. But you actually touched on something that I don't think anyone's really paying attention. The deep rooted like truth of what made him him. And looking at the time, I can't believe our hour's almost up.
Yeah, I know.
But let's kind of cover this the G.G. Allen thing.
I'll try to sum it up really quick. It's just he's really nihilistic, obviously, but the thing is that he was really on a mission, and he put he saw for him creating the music and the art being the albums, the artifactual residue of what he was doing, that was the most important thing, and his life was secondary to that. I've always basically believed that about myself. So kind of coming back to him and discovering him in a big way a few years ago, it sort of reminded me of the fact that I have to put my art and my albums and the things that I do before, my self-interest, and my life is secondary to my art. Wow. And that's what I'm always gonna stick to. Like, my life is nothing without my art. I don't have any kids. I'm not married. I'm not gonna get married. I'm not gonna have any kids. It's not a big decision for me. But like, my art is totally, that's way more important in my life. And I'm not saying that because my art's gonna like live a long time. It's just a purely instinctive feel. And that's something that Gigi understood, that his art, it was his weapon, it was his mission. And so that's where and that's where I totally respect and like revere the guy.
And guess what's happening? You and I are talking about G.G. Allen. People are still talking about G.G. Allen. He had an impact, whether, like you said, whether it was that surface impact or was that deeper impact of his whole mission statement of what he did.
Yeah.
We're still talking about him. And he's also an important musician and player within that genre of punk rock, metal, whatever we want to put him in, right? He's important. And I love the fact, like, on the surface, it's all G.G. Allen, and it is what it is. But
Yeah.
when you were sharing with me what you had, there was a lot of deeper things going on, and hopefully we can talk about that in the future and really get a good understanding about G.G. Allen. Maybe, really share the differences and how you see how he.
We'll come back when the EP is out.
Definitely.
And then, because it's supposed to be a label in Ventura. I wanted to get Blood Orange to release it because they released all the G.G. Allen stuff. Oh, man.
That would have been so cool.
Oh, I would have loved it, dude, but that guy never returned my emails.
When he hears that EP, man, he going to be like, let's do special release. Trust me. There's no way that he's not going to be able to hear that and not pick up on what you guys are laying down. But you know what? We are going to have to get going in the next few minutes because we do have
we're out of time.
A hologram. We're out of time because these conversations are fun and they sneak up on us. Now, Steve, where can we find more information on the Happy Casualties? Where can we buy the 2-disc vinyl of Bloods, Droughts, and Other Ravages Visited Upon the Earth?
Okay, so I don't have a Facebook anymore because I got censored because of the Bleed Worship Bleed album cover. So just find the Happy Casualties on Instagram. Follow us. If you message me, then I'll work out a way to get you a copy of the record.
Right on.
And, if you want to book us, hit me up on Instagram. Basically, just hit me up on Instagram. I guess there's a way you can contact me through Bandcamp, and it goes to my email, so do that too.
All right, right on. And you know what? We're definitely going to be playing a lot more in the coming year, in the coming future, of more Happy Casualties. We'll even probably go back and listen to some of the older albums. But, here at KQBH 101.5 FM, especially in Studio B, I just wanted to really spotlight this album and really talk to you, Steve, and really get a good idea. And I want people to hear how long you've been doing this and how you're just not going to stop and how you're going to continue persevering and putting these albums out regardless of anything.
I'm never going to stop. You're my hype man.
No, wait, you know what? We hope you don't stop, man. I hope you and your and Mr. Blandford will continue that mission. You know what? We're going to say goodbye because before we go, I do want to leave them with another song. We're going to get into His Girl Death.
Okay.
And what I really like about that song, it's so cinematic that to me I was like, that is going to be in a Kevin Smith movie because that is such a cinematic song. All right, guys? I'm going to say goodbye to you.
Thanks, Patrick.
Hey, you're welcome, and thank you for coming down. Thank you for sharing and bringing us the album here at the station. I definitely appreciate that. But you know what? I do not think that this is going to be our last conversation. I feel we are going to have some more deep conversations here at KQBH 101.5 FM. This is Patrick J. Martinez, just another geek from East LA. Everybody, we're going to end here with the Happy Casualties with His Girl
Death.
Whispers and shadows, and they're all around, and they carry you out to the crowd who wait with stupid looks on their faces. That's a dull pain, it's not concise, or at the edge beside the point of all the things that you hate. Everything is utterly broken and devastated. it, nothing can be repaired anymore. To think that this could all have somehow been avoided when it's just the thing that you've been waiting for. Hey boy, you better start singing about death, yeah. Hey boy, you better start thinking about the end, yeah. Hey boy, you better start singing about death, 'cause she's been asking about you again. When I go, I wanna be so angry that it blocks out any afterthought that I might have. What's done is done, there's nothing you can do to change it, and nothing is gonna